What do you do when faced with life challenges and triumphs? On this episode of Life Jack, the Resilience Podcast, we welcome the extraordinary Teri Bayus, a multi-talented writer, speaker, and creative force. Teri is not just a writer, however. She is a masterful weaver of words, a creator of worlds, and a beacon of inspiration in the realm of storytelling. With 2 self-published novels, 4 teleplays, and 2 option screenplays under her belt, Teri's creativity knows no bounds, painting vivid pictures of imagination and emotion. Step into Teri's captivating world, where tales come alive with the flick of a pen and where the mysteries of the universe unfold in her nonfiction gem, The Universal Conspiracy. But Teri's journey is not just one of literary prowess. It is a testament to resilience and unwavering passion. From her time as a trapeze artist, chronicled in the thrilling The Greatest of Ease, to her role as a food and film critic and the executive director of the Central Coast Writers Conference, Teri has navigated the highs and lows of life with grace and determination. Despite facing setbacks, including the challenges following 9/11 and the personal loss of her son, Teri's spirit remained unbroken. Through the power of storytelling and the catharsis of creation, she has found solid strength and a path forward. With a supportive husband by her side and a close-knit family that embodies the essence of love and resilience, Teri's journey is a testament to the transformative power of art, community, and unwavering faith in oneself.
Sometimes life gives us lemons. Sometimes it gives us lemonade. Other times it gives us something entirely out of left field that makes us say, WTF. But no matter what obstacles come, there is most often a way out on the other side, and we are once again victorious. My name is Dr. Rowe, and you are listening to my podcast about resilience. Every guest shares a tragedy to triumph story to give listeners like you the inspiration to push through every single day. Listen now as my next guest shares how they were life jacked.
Hi, Teri. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm good. I rescued 2 kittens about 5 months ago, and they had to get fixed yesterday, so I'm dealing with some psychopath cats. But other than that, I'm good.
Well, I understand how that can be. We have a cat now. I never would have thought that we'd be a cat family, but we had a cat, a little piece of kitten at the time, pretty much, who showed up at our door in July of 2022, and she had 7 kittens. 7.
Oh my goodness.
And of course, I did what everybody says not to do. I fed her and gave her water, but I had to because I'm a mom and I felt she had to nurse her baby, so I had to give her water.
Exactly.
But yes, we got her fixed as fast as I could.
The cats don't do well in cones, so I'm just laughing like nonstop all day as they try to pull them off and bump into walls. And
Yes, I remember that all too well. Now, Teri, would you mind sharing a little bit about your background and how you grew up for the listeners who may not know you?
I grew up in, Steamboat, Nevada, which is halfway between Reno and Carson City. It was Mark Twain named it because it was one of the Pony Express stops. And it's got natural hot springs there, so when you crest the mountain, it looks like a steamboat. But it's actually just hot springs. So I grew up in a farm environment, a little farm environment. And my parents were not farmers. They were really well citified people. So my sisters and I took it to ourselves to learn from the neighbors and became cowgirls and farmers and everything else. And just loved it. But we were, 45 minutes from anything. So trying to get people to come out, once I was a teenager, trying to get people to come get me out there was like, no. And so then when I turned 18, like literally the day I turned 18, I moved into the city because I was tired of just being with my horse. But as things come full circle, and then I moved to San Francisco. I was going to, actually Berkeley. I was going to Mills College. I got a full 4-year scholarship there. And I didn't like it there. I was studying to be an attorney, and I didn't like it. So I ran away and joined the circus. And spent 6 years as a trapeze artist traveling the world.
Wow.
And
ran away and joined the circus.
I literally did. I literally did. And it's funny because, I've always taught writing and been with the writing thing. And everybody's like, because it was the circus story just became like an antidote for, cocktail parties. You can really stop a whole party by saying, well, when I was with the circus, and I tell little anecdotes about when I lost the elephants and what it's like to live with monkeys. And but then everybody kept saying, you have a story that nobody else has, because when I was with the circus, you didn't join us. Now you can, thanks to Cirque du Soleil. You can, almost every gym in the world has some kind of aerial program. But back then, unless you were born into it, you didn't get in. And I wormed my way into it. And I married a trapeze artist and had 2 kids on the road. And then I decided that was not a good life for my children. And so we got a Circus in Reno had just opened up. And so we got a job flying there at Circus. So then we were still flying, but we were doing it like 4 shows a night. And then my husband and I decided that we had nothing in common. And so we had a very, nice handshake, and he went his way and I went mine. And so my current husband, who just thinks it's all fascinating, him and I celebrate our 30th anniversary next June. So meanwhile, I've had the 2 circus kids, and then we adopted 6 other kids.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been in a perpetual state of circus the whole time.
I can imagine. I just have 3 boys, and I feel like I'm in a circus.
Oh my goodness. Boys are the best and the worst.
Yeah,
you don't have to worry about them, except for they break things.
They do on their bodies and in places.
Exactly. But the girls are a whole nother thing. So one of my granddaughters has just turned 13, and her mom's like, was I this bad to you? And I'm like, absolutely. I'm enjoying every minute of it.
Too funny.
When the kids got to be teenagers, we didn't like having them in Reno because it was too transient. So we moved them to Pismo Beach, California, where nothing happens except for surf and sand. And we've been here ever since. And so now we moved away from the beach. I'm full circle. I have now my own little ranch. So I have about 10 acres. I have 2 horses, 3 ducks, 1 giant tortoise, 3 cats, a couple frogs, and 1 dog right now.
Wow. So you just love consistently being in a circus type environment.
Yeah, it seems to suit me. When things get really nice and quiet and normal, I kind of lose my mind. So as my children says, I collect weirdness.
I love it. I love it. But that's the unique thing about each one of us. We have our own story, and it doesn't have to be the same as the next person or our neighbor. It gets to be uniquely ours.
Exactly.
Now, you have an impressive body of work, including self-published novels, screenplays, and teleplays. What drives your creativity and passion for storytelling?
Well, I write to find out what I think about things. And I was originally, my writing career started when we moved, in Reno. I started writing for a magazine that was in Reno and Las Vegas and doing restaurant reviews. And I loved that. And they hired me because when I was with the circus, I was with like every nationality you can possibly imagine, because we changed troops every year. And so I had this real advanced palate. And so they hired me to be a food writer. And then I got here and I talked the local newspaper here to letting me be a food writer. And so for 21 years, I wrote a food review every single week for 21 years. And then every week. And so that was very satisfying, because you would eat the restaurant. I did at the restaurant 2 or 3 times. And then I'd write a first draft, which was long, really lengthy. And then I'd have to pare it down to 1,500 words. And and not 1501 and not 1499. It had to be 1500 words every single time. So it was like a skill set and a muscle that I had, but I wanted to try different things. So then I wrote a movie, and just on a bizarre, weird lark, or I'm good, I don't know, I optioned it to Revelations Entertainment in 2001. So that's Morgan Freeman and Laurie McQuarrie. They did Madam Secretary and everything else that Morgan does. And so that was, I had written it to make the movie myself. So the characters were all the kids I had in the house. And it was basically about the art of storytelling, because we raised our kids. We wouldn't let them have TV, which made me the worst mom in the world. I wanted them to learn how to tell stories and how to communicate with people. So when people came over, they had to share a story and they had to talk. And so I wrote that about like a coming of age, it was like a coming of age, and the kids take down the cable system, which funny, I went to the cable system at this time and I said, okay, so if somebody wanted to take you guys down, how would they do it? And they showed me how to do it. I did it so much.
Wow.
And so basically, it was just about the art of storytelling. So Revelations option in 2001, it was called Hookah. It was about, the hookah is a Middle Eastern peace pipe that you smoke fruit in. So we let our kids do it because they thought they were cool. They thought they were like smoking a big bong, but it was nothing but fruit. And then they bought it. And then I think like one of the studios picked it up first. But then like, I think 20 days later, the towers came down and all studios scrapped anything that had anything to do with Middle Eastern. So for then the next 9 years, we developed it as the art of storytelling. And so we would change it to the kids are on an island and they're isolated, or the kids are this was funny. At one point, the kids were in the future and they each sat at their desk and never had any human interaction. It was all on their computers, and they never got to go anywhere or do anything. And the computer decided when they were low on eggs and ordered it for them. And everything was bought online. And it was like when the pandemic happened, the other screenwriter that had come on to help produce this was like, oh my gosh, we predicted the future. But it still hasn't been made.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's remarkable. Now, can you share the inspiration behind your novel, The Greatest of Ease? And just how exactly how was it being a trapeze artist?
It was awesome and amazing and terrifying and horrible. But it was, I was young. I was 21 years old. So when I first joined the troupe, I had to spend 3 months on the ground learning. We didn't know the term yet, but it was teaching my core to be strong. So it was like 175 sit-ups a day. And then, the trapeze is mostly through your core. It's not so much in your arms. And then once I got strong enough, I had to train myself to know where you are in the air, because it's like an airline pilot. They have to learn where they are in the air, because you don't naturally know when you are in the air if you don't see the ground and you don't see something above you. So you have to kind of train your inner brain to know where you are in the air so you can come out of tricks, and you have to learn how to listen.
Well, wait, I was going to ask, that's kind of the same thing that Simone Biles has, right? She kind of has that. And that's why she kind of stopped competing, right? Because she said she couldn't feel herself in the air, and so she wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, and I think she called it the twisties. I'm like, oh, we had another name for it. But yeah, that's a very real thing. Because, it's a very real thing. In fact, one of the girls that worked with me on the trapeze, we were in Reno, and she got hit by a car and it hit her head. And it broke those things inside. I can't remember what the technical term. But it basically broke those things inside. And so when she was in the emergency room, they're like, nobody comes back from this. You're never going to be able to walk or anything. But because hers was such a strong muscle, because she'd been trapezing her whole life, hers did grow back and she was fine. There are little hairs in your ear canal, and they look like broccoli. They kind of float around. But anyway, so that was the second 3 months of learning where I was in the air. And then the next 3 months was learning how to fall, because that's the most important part, because the trapeze uses a net, but the net is the most dangerous part of the trapeze, because if you hit that wrong, you break your back, you break your neck or your arm or whatever you land on wrong. So then I had to learn to fall. And then after that, I was ready, mostly because it was a necessity. All of my sister-in-laws were pregnant. So I was like the only female left that could fly, and they always need a female in the act. And so then I started flying. We did 4 shows a day, or 3 shows a day, and we moved every day at least 50 to 150 miles. So we'd roll into town, get up at 5. The boys you have to set up the trapeze, and it was, in inside coliseums and inside ice rinks and inside, sometimes there were mud shows, which are the ones that are just out in the dirt and there's a tent. And then we would have to practice to make sure, because the trapeze is actually geometry. So if it's not right, no matter how good we are, we aren't catching anything. So then we fixed it so it was right. And then our first show was at 10. The next show was at 3. The last show was at 7. Ended around 9:30. We'd tear it all down and then drive to the next place.
Wow. What
Very glamorous.
All we know when we go to the shows like the Cirque du Soleil and the Barnum and Bailey, even the Universal Circus, I mean, we just see like the finished body of work and not knowing all the hours and hours and hours and hours that has been put into, for the preparation of a show.
Right. And that's the other thing is during the show, you only throw the tricks that you 110% know are going to stick, because if you throw a trick and you miss it, then the circus docks your pay. So another thing we'd have to do is at the end of the last show, we would prep before we took it down. We'd practice for about an hour to try the new tricks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense though, because and plus it would be pretty dramatic and horrific if you were trying to do a new trick and it went wrong and in front of all of the patrons there.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't want that. One time we were in Canada. We were on an ice rink, because in Canada they just put like a sheet of plywood over their ice, and that's where we would set up. So the trapeze was attached underneath the bleachers, but somebody touched something. So when we climbed the rope ladder to get onto it's a plexiglass and metal frame, and the rest of the trapeze is metal. It was hot. It was alive, electrocuting us. So now there's 7 up there. We can't grab the bar. We can't hang on to anything. The audience is like, what are they doing? The band stops because they can see the sparks as we touch it. And so then we just had to very unceremoniously dive off and pray that we didn't break our neck.
Wow.
And then they went into the bleachers, they unhooked it, hooked it up right, and we went and did our act.
Wow. Now you have a nonfiction book, The Universal Conspiracy. I mean, oh my gosh, it sounds intriguing, because anything with conspiracy in it.
I know. My husband still doesn't think the title's right, but I like it, so.
Love it. It sounds intriguing to me. So can you kind of give us a glimpse to the mysteries of the universe that you explore in this book?
So basically, I am of the belief that, and I get bombarded negatively about this all the time, but I have believed, and I have proven 1,000 times over again, that the universe will give you everything you want and need. Sometimes what you want and think you need is not so good for you, but if you're clear in your intentions, you will get everything you need and everything you want. So for example, like after the circus husband, I was like, I want a guy with just one job and never travel and blah, blah, blah. So I started dating this guy, and he was like, it's a horrible, horrible human being who drank all the time. It was just terrible. And I'm like, okay, I need to get more specific. I still like to travel. I still like to laugh. Okay, these are the things I'm looking for. But, twice I bought a business with no money because I just decided I wanted it, and money was not going to be an option for me. And I did it twice. And my husband is a business broker, and he says it's impossible to do, though he's watched me do it twice. And, it's like I wanted more kids, but I couldn't have more kids. So I got me some more kids and wanted kittens. And
I love it. Hey, that brings a whole new perspective to doing a vision board.
No, seriously. Well, okay, so My husband well, now I think he kind of does after 30 years, but he's like, this theory view is just BS. Like, so when all of the foster kids, the foster ones that we adopted, moved out, they time out of the system and they're left with nothing. And so they want to go out on their own. They want to do their own thing. So I would have them make me a list of everything you need I'd get them to the apartment. Like, make me a list of everything you need. So they'd make me these lists, and I'd get up on Saturday mornings and I'd go to garage sales with these lists. And I'd hand them to people. And by the end of the day, I had even one of the last things on the list of one of the boys was toilet paper. And I'm thinking, nobody's going to give you guys toilet paper, but okay, we're going to believe in this. So I hand it, and this lady's like, oh my God, I just bought this huge case from Costco and I hate this toilet paper. Here you go. So every single one of my kids, I did it that way. So then my husband's like, this doesn't work. I'm like, all right, we're going out tomorrow. What do you want? He's like, I want a barbecue. Because every time a kid moved out, they took the barbecue. He's like, I go, so tell me about this barbecue. And he's like, well, it's a Weber one. I don't want any propane. And I'm like, what color is this barbecue? Well, it's going to be red and it's going to be brand new. And I'm like, and how much are you willing to pay for this barbecue? Nothing. I'm like, okay. And God is my witness, the very first house we went to, there was this whole pasture, and there's like 8 barbecues out in the pasture. And so I get up there, and I'm like, what's up with the barbecues? And he's like, oh, yeah, we're getting rid of those. And we walk over, and there's, just as he described it, barbecue. And so he goes back, he goes, how much? And he's like, it's free. Take it. Yeah. So anytime anybody, yep. Still have that magic barbecue.
Well,
so the book is. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wow, that is amazing. I think I need to put more faith in my vision board that I created.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, one time I wanted to go on a trip, and I'm like, we didn't have any money. We had 8 kids. It's like, ugh. And I won a trip to go on this shale boat in the Caribbean, and then all the grandmas lined up and took all the kids, and we went on this miraculous trip, and I don't think we spent a cent. So so the book is me kind of telling those stories, but it's just kind of this narcissistic tale of how I do things and how I stay positive no matter how much crap goes wrong or how terrible it is. How I keep on top of this thing where I believe I deserve to be happy, and I believe that I should live a good life and be surrounded by love and be healthy and all that type of stuff. Even in the face of just horrible circumstances, I still believe that, and it usually comes true.
No, I mean, that makes sense, but that's really what resilience is, right? Is that you believe that although you get life jacked, right? Although things jack with your life, you actually believe that you have the right to push through, right? You have the right to have positive experiences. You have the right to affirm yourself to keep going.
Yep, absolutely. I have because there's been times where we lost our house. We lost our house in 2008 because the whole California real estate nightmare thing. But I mean, we chose to give it away because we paid like $350,000 for it, and then it appraised for $160,000. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not attached to anything that much. So we walked away from the house, and so my girlfriends came over and helped me pack up all my shit, and pack up all my stuff, and put it away in the storage because we didn't know we were gonna go. And then three years later, I have my own TV show, and my girlfriend's like, I was there, and I thought, there's no way anybody's coming back from this, and now you have your own TV show? I'm like, yeah, I decided I wanted one. And that's how the TV show happened. I've been writing the food reviews for probably like 15 years, and some of these chefs were just worthy of more than 1,500 words. They were just so dynamic and doing such amazing things. So I just took my little camera and sat it up and said, all right, this is what we're going to do. I came up with the idea of calling it Taste Buds, because everybody thinks that all food critics think the same thing, and we don't. We don't agree on anything. And so I used to go on the radio with another food critic, and everybody was always amazed that her and I agreed on nothing. And so what I did was I'd bring like either a foodie or a food critic with me, and we tried the same dishes at a big, nice restaurant, and showcasing the chef, letting him talk about who he was and his passion. And then the second half, and they'd give us the same dish and we would both react differently to it. Then the second half of the show is I took that chef to a small little restaurant that nobody knew about that was like very special in its own way. And then he became the food critic. And so we called it Taste Buds. And I did the first one just all by myself with my little Mac and my little Canon recorder. And then the county wanted me to do it for certain things. And I went 3 seasons doing that. And then people would say, how'd you get this job? I'm like, I invented this job. Nobody told me how to do it, and I don't know what I'm doing. I'd never been in front of the camera, and I'm certainly not a full of stick figures like you see on a lot of these shows. I'm a food writer. I'm a hardy gal, and I got to go to Cuba to do the show. I got to go Italy, Paris, London. Where else? There's one other one, but I got into Cuba because they had just opened up those paladars there where they were, for the first time, the government was letting individual people make their own restaurants. So they let me in on a visa to show how that was going.
Wow. That is amazing.
Yeah.
But I think, that's the best thing is you just make your own way and you just let it flow naturally. I think that's one of the things I've done with this show is I've just let it flow naturally. And of course, people give you suggestions on what you should do and the way I should do things. And I've decided that this time, nope, I'm going to do it just the way that I want to and in just the manner that I'm doing it right now.
Good for you. Good for you. Yeah, I mean, my whole thing through Taste Buds was like, I don't know what I don't know till I don't know it. Because they go, well, how do you want this to look? I'm like, I don't know. Show me, because I went through about 19 editors the first season because I didn't know what to tell them. It wasn't like they did anything. One of my grandsons was like, Nanny, you keep firing people. And I think that's me. And I'm like, I'm not firing anybody. And I just know what they're doing is not what I want. And when I find what I want, I'll keep him forever. And I have.
I love it. And now, you mentioned selling your screenplay, Hookah, in 2001.
Yeah.
But then you said, of course, 9/11 came. And so with those challenges, that impacted your work and impacted the selling. So how did you bounce back from that? Or
I wrote another screenplay. So I was sitting in these meetings with Revelations and Morgan. And Morgan was like very, very vocal about what he wanted and what he didn't want to do. Because now he had his own production company and he could say. And he would say like, I wish I was in a Christmas movie. I wish I was, the family pops me in every year and there's my face. And so I wrote him a Christmas movie. I just listened. And so that was how through that whole thing, I just kept writing. So I've written those 2 movies and then one other. And then I got tired of movie business because it was just weird. And then I decided to write a teleplay when the pandemic happened. Because when the pandemic happened, I lost all my jobs because everything shut down. So I'm like, all right, I can't be a food writer. I can't do Taste Buds. All the money went to just keeping the business, all the money that was financing the show went to keeping businesses alive while the restaurants were all closed down. And so then I'm like, all right, I'm going to try TV. I've never watched TV. I'm really anti-TV, but I'm going to try a TV show. And so I took a class with Stage 32. Any aspiring screenwriters it's a free platform. It's kind of like a social media platform, but they also teach. They have a really, really, really good education division. And then they also now have you can get certified to be things in movies, like a production assistant and that type of thing. But anyway, they were offering a class. I didn't have anything to do, so I took one on how to write a 30-minute sitcom. And I had a plan in the beginning. We were all meeting on Zoom, of course, and then he's like, yeah, this doesn't feel right. He's like, what do you know? I'm like, I know a food critic. He goes, there's never been a show about a food critic. So I wrote a show about a food critic and then ended up writing the whole Bible, wrote everything about it. And it's basically a food writer his last name is Grimm. And so he goes into restaurants, and while he's eating, he hallucinates. And so it's like kind of like clues that the audience is getting the whole time, because each restaurant turns into a fairy tale. So the first one is called Pumpkins, and it's a female chef making pizzas over the hearth, and her sisters and her mom run the front of the house. So I'm kind of playing with the whole myth thing and the food critic thing. And so eventually, I think the second season, he goes to Mexico. And so then we're doing all the Mexican myths and fairy tales. And then we go all over the world and picking up all the different fairy tales from all over the world. And then we find out why he's having the hallucinations and all that stuff.
Wow, how unique.
I think so. And I can't believe it hasn't sold, but it hasn't. And I'm not sure why, but whatever. Hollywood is a weird beast. But then I wrote one about, at one point, my husband and I, this is the time where I bought a bar and with no money down. And so owning a bar in Reno that's open 23 hours a day with live music every night is its own set of stories. And so I had done so well with The Greatest of Ease. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do Del Mar. And so it's basically just what it's like, kind of a single mom running a bar and all the characters and the weirdness that happens there. And then I wrote another one about a topless bar, but it's basically, you never see the girls dancing. It's basically the behind the scenes in that strip club arena and all the weird things that happen there.
I'm sure.
And it's actually about women empowerment. It's not about the other way around. The women run the show. So all the women have all the power.
Oh, I love it. Now, overcoming setbacks is a key theme in building resilience, right? So,
right.
You've already shared, a way that you have navigated from one setback, after, for example, just writing another screenplay when your hookah screenplay, was pulled and it didn't sell. So how best can someone navigate setbacks to keep moving forward in their creative pursuit?
Well, one of the things, after my son died, I was not able to write. Well, I wrote for the first month. I got it was this weird waking up in the middle of the night writing stuff, not remembering I wrote it the next day. And it was all very raw and very horrible, as a mother in grief would be. And then I couldn't write. And everybody was very concerned about me because I've always written. And I'm like, okay, well, I know I'm a creative person, so I'm going to have to figure out something else to do to feed this creative muscle, because I'll lose my mind. I just know that when I'm all bunched up, my husband goes, go write something. So I had to run around and find creative things to be creative. So one of the things I'm doing is the whole family comes over every Monday night, and every Monday night is some kind of theme and event. And so I'm constantly having to come up with new venues and new games and new things. Like last week everybody had to do Shark Tank. Everybody had to invent and pitch to the rest of the club. The weekend before that, we did a obstacle course. I just went to the Goodwill and got a bunch of weird shit and put it weird stuff and put it all over the pasture. And so that we have bigger boys and little girls. And so I bought curlers. So the boys had to put curlers in their hair, and then they had to put on a dress and run in the dress, because I wanted to slow the boys down and things they didn't understand. Oh, they had to braid something too. And then we did the Mike Myers Run-a-thon. Have you heard that? So one person puts on the Mike Myers mask and starts twice as far away as the other person. And all the other person has to do is make it to the front door and open it, and then they live.
Oh, wow. I love it.
But so next week I'm turning one of the bedrooms into a haunted house. And then we're doing horror-themed food. And so that has been constantly feeding my creativity every week. Plus, it forces everybody to come over and eat. Plus, it forces everybody to giggle and laugh. And now I think I've been doing it for 2 months now. And now I'm starting to write again.
Oh, that's amazing.
So it's I think the short answer is whatever it is you're doing, especially if you're a creative, find a way to create that it feels exciting. I mean, at one point I started making do-it-yourself Halloween crafts, and they were just disasters. I left the glue gun on all night. It was nothing worked.
Oh, wow.
So much money at Michael's getting these things. So, but I won't give up on them. I'm like, no. They're like, did you just go by? Because it was like a floating bottle pouring into a cauldron. And I can't get it to work. And I guess they have one on Amazon for $50. My daughter's like, just buy one. I'm like, no, I'm going to make this work. So I have one more week to make it work. But I think it's about never giving up the thing you love. So I'm not giving up writing. I'm just leaning into the creative part of me. And then, I'm leaning into wanting to talk to more people, because that's the other thing that grief does to you. It kind of makes you go inward. And he died, I think 2 months into my Greatest of These book tour. And I had all these podcasts and everything done. And I just said, I'm sorry, I can't. So now it's like, no, I'm going to do this. That's why I contacted you. It's like, no, we're going to do this. We're going to, it's not like the book got old. It's just I got a year older. So I think it's about forward movement, or no movement at all, just not going backwards.
I love it. Now, you've mentioned before that you believe resilience happens on the page. So how exactly does writing help you process your emotions and experiences? And do you think it's contributed to your growth as a person and artist?
Oh, absolutely. Writing shows me what I think about things. Like, I think I know how I feel about getting 2 kittens, but until I write it out, I don't know how I really feel about it. I mean, that's a weird example, but literally, even so the Greatest of These was a roman cliff, which is basically, it's a true story, but kind of changed for a narrative feel. Like, On the Road, Jack Kerouac is a roman cliff. Kill a Mockingbird is a roman cliff. So it's my stories. They're just put in a certain way, a certain narrative. And so I think that I didn't know, I know this because, so originally the circus stories were anecdotes. Everybody thought it was the funniest thing in the world. They'd say, have you met this girl? She used to work in the circus. But when I sat down to write it, what I didn't realize is that I was writing a story about a dumb girl in their 20s. I didn't realize that I had to revisit this person who I put very high on a deep shelf that I couldn't get to anymore. I had to revisit how I felt about my ex-husband. And it stalled the project so many times because I had to admit how I really felt about that. Not just, here's a funny story about elephants. Because one of the things that people always asked me was, why did you run away and join the circus? I had full 4-year scholarship. Why? And I've never been able to answer that. Just, I go, look, you have cute red ties. I've never been able to answer it. And through writing the book, I now know and understand why I did it. But, 30 years later, and I still couldn't answer that question. But by putting it down in a narrative that made it so other people had to understand and go on this journey with me, right? I couldn't just I had to explain what it's like to climb the rope. And I had to explain what it's like to hold on up there, and what it's like to be up there with 7 people who don't like you. And what it's like, in the 80s, there was no central banking, there was no cell phones, there was no email, there was nothing. Because a lot of people say, why didn't you just go home? And I was like, that wasn't an option. The most I could do was every now and then find a quarter and call my mom. But other than that, it was like, I didn't remember how all of that made the Teri that is now until I wrote. I'm like, oh, that's why I do that. That's why I always have 3 pantries full of food at all times. Because zombie apocalypse is coming. Now we know it now. And so the short answer is writing teaches you what you really are.
Wow, I love that. Now, can you share a little bit more about your support system? Like you said, your husband and how your loved ones have been instrumental in your journey of resilience and creativity.
Well, yeah, my husband is like the most uncreative person in the world. It's kind of funny. And he thinks this is all just the most bewildering thing he's ever seen in his whole life. To him to write an email, you might as well just put a gun into his head. But I can come up with ideas all day long. If somebody And I've done it at a couple meetings. Like, I need 7 movie ideas. I've got it like that. My weakness is sussing them out and making it so it's palatable for everybody, right? So it's evergreen, so everybody will understand what I'm trying to say. And so that part I really struggle with. And so he was always confused about whether I like writing or not, because when I'm doing the work, I'm like very dramatic and running out and throwing myself on the couch, and I can't do this anymore. When I'm editing, I would just do anything to skip that part, because my brain doesn't work like that. My brain is very creative, and we don't ever want to do the same task ever again. Give me an Excel spreadsheet and I'll just throw up on my computer. He sees all of these things, and he sees my joys and he just like, okay, well, this is the part you hate, but when you get done, you like it. So he like sees it and acknowledges it, and then still supports me. Like when we first built the screenplay, we live in Pismo Beach, and they're in Santa Monica. So it's about a 2.5-hour drive if you drive like a maniac, which my husband does. And so they would call me at 9 a.m. and say, we have a 3:30 appointment. So we'd have to get down there. And so he devised all these things so he could speed and not get a ticket. So he like got some fireman sticker and put it on the back of a car because he heard that the highway patrol don't pull over firemen. At one point he went and got like a priest outfit because he heard that they don't give fathers thing. He went to all this trouble so he could get me there. But no matter what the traffic, he could get me there. And that kind of dedication is like, okay, I'm not wearing a nun habit, but okay, buddy. So he's usually my first reader. He's very honest about what works and what doesn't in a gentle way. He's learned not to use red pens anymore. He uses purple pens. And then my biggest supporter were the book opening, we did it at a local restaurant, and we found a trapeze artist from the local gym, and he helped take down this awning for this restaurant so the trapeze could be there, and help the girls set up the trapeze so they could fly. While I was reading and explaining things to the audience, there was actual trapeze artists behind me. And the next day went and put the canopy back up the restaurant. Yeah, I mean, there isn't anything he won't do for me.
So what's next for Teri Bayus?
Before the pandemic, I had kind of decided, because I still have that travel bug, which is basically the reason I ran away with the circus. I wanted to travel like constantly. I really like to travel. So that was the food writing turned into an excuse for me to go places. I did articles for Airbnb, and they sent me to Paris, and everything was based on me going somewhere. So I think what I want to be when I grow up, I want to be like a motivational speaker. I want to stand in front. I teach classes, and this may sound arrogant, but people love me. And I'm super upbeat and super positive. And so I wanted before.
I love you. This interview is great.
Well, thank you. So I want to be like a motivational speaker. So I'm not gone all the time because I love my little farm, but I get to go here and there and meet new people and talk to new people and do new things. I had all set up to be that, and then the pandemic happened, and they're like, do it over Zoom. I go, yeah, I don't translate over Zoom. You guys see this in person. So that's what I want to be. I want to be a motivational speaker. I think there's other words for it. But anyway, because I teach classes, I teach nonprofits how to fundraise, which are really popular. And I was doing big groups, and it's like making a huge difference, because these are the people that are working, basically putting the Band-Aid on a gaping wound, and they need all the help they can get. And so I give them, because I ran nonprofits for years when the kids were little, and I needed like a real job. And I teach a lot of writing stuff, because I think writing can cure anything, absolutely anything. And so I just want to take it to a bigger audience.
Now, what advice would you give to any writers or aspiring creatives looking to build their own resilience and pursue their passion?
It's a muscle, and you have to exercise it just like you have to jog, or you have to bodybuild, or you have to learn how to cook. It is a muscle. It's a memory muscle. So you do it every day, no matter what. Sometimes I sit at the computer and I'm so mad at the world, I just type, I hate the world, I hate the world, I hate the world. But eventually, maybe I don't hate the world so much because I have these kittens. And then boom, I'm off and running. So it's a matter of butt in the seat and writing, and also knowing to the depths of your soul that no one can tell the story like you can. No one could tell my circus story, even though there was a lot of people there with me through the whole thing. No one could tell it like I do. Everybody's voice is the most authentic thing they have. And you don't have to worry about grammar, and you don't have to worry about you don't know sentences or big words. You just need to get your words on the page.
I love that. Well, Teri, thank you for sharing your incredible journey with the listeners and me today on Life Jack, the Resilience Podcast. Your story is a true embodiment of resilience, definitely creativity, and unwavering dedication to storytelling. How can listeners find and connect with you or even purchase one of your books?
My website is teribayus.com. So TeriBayus.com has everything I've done up there. My webmaster thinks I'm insane, but I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. We're going to throw it all up there.
I love it. Any last words of encouragement for the listeners?
You are the one to tell your stories. If you want to know who you are or how you feel about things, write it down.
I appreciate your insights on resilience and the importance of surrounding ourselves with a supportive community. Your story reminds us that through life challenges and triumph, the power of creativity and resilience can really guide us forward. Thank you, Teri, for sharing your inspiring story. I wish you and your family nothing but blessings and abundance. Please take care.
Thank you very much for having me.
Teri Bayus, everyone. Be sure to join me next time for more uplifting stories and insights on resilience. Until then, keep pushing forward, embrace the journey, and remember that every setback can lead to a greater comeback. Dr. Rose signing off.